Hey guys, welcome back to my tutorials. We're doing another tutorial and I've just got the update with the new library for Procreate brushes, which is amazing. I am so excited about all these different textures, but I haven't actually looked at them yet at all besides just this. I'm so excited though. But today I'm just going to focus on working with the regular Procreate brushes that we all know, the old stuff, to get a tutorial to you. And this one is creating an overgrown library. So let's just go straight ahead. As always, I am a little bit unfamiliar with these because I tend to use my own brushes. So just bear with me when I am searching for something. But let's just go ahead and start with where's my recent pack? Here, with the hard airbrush. From your airbrush pack in Procreate, from the original library. Now that I have to say that as well. Um, and let's just add our area with our light and window, because obviously every library is going to have a window, and this is just sort of the lighter area with lots of warm light coming through and lots of trees and stuff. So I'm just going to add these couple of like more darker yellow greenish colors here next to that orange and the other one. Okay, and then we'll just add our wall on that side. Let's choose a desaturated orange here. That's sort of between yellow and red. And let's just go and add that across. Don't worry about drawing over your window like this for a second. We're just going to get the basic structure in, and then we'll really fine tune everything with more detailed brushes. So just get that all in there. I'm using the A4 canvas preset again, as always, but I have halved it just because it will take me less time to show you what I'm doing. And yeah, let's just go ahead and create a new layer. And with the syrup brush from Procreate, I'm going to choose a darker color for this first part because I want to basically add my library bookshelves. For that, let's go ahead and enable the drawing guide. Make sure you've got it set to do 2D grid. I'm stumbling over my words. And then once you've enabled that, you can hide it again and then press drawing assist on your new layer. And then that way you'll just automatically have nice straight lines. And we're going to do a couple of these over here, just like that. And then pull one to the side like that, hold it and pull it up. So it sort of matches the top of these, of this area. I'm just gonna make a thicker line over here. Actually, maybe here too, just thicken these guys up a little bit. And here. And then once that is done, I'm going to add another shelf on the back with just a regular shelf looking at us sort of straight ahead. Let's go ahead and duplicate that layer and then pull the top one down, for example, just a little bit, and that will really thicken those lines up. I'll merge those together. It's still all drawing assisted. I'll create a new layer and set that to drawing assist as well, and also just add a bookshelf that comes in from this side. It won't really reach the floor, so I'm actually going to take that away a little bit. And then just sort of draw these out to the side. Try and make sure that the thickness is fairly equal across the board. I don't think this would be the perfect brush for this exercise, but that's okay. It's just nice and sharp, which is sort of my main requirement with this, really. And once you've got that, you can take this layer and set the moving tool to distort. Then pull that one up and pull this here down. Trying to keep it all nice and straight. sort of like that. Disable the drawing assist on all layers so we don't get accidentally confused. And then with the eraser in Syrup, I'm also just going to erase the parts that are overlapping in the back there. And now we can also create a new layer above or below, doesn't matter. And let's just make sure we get our window all nice and sharply outlined. Actually, I preferred this one compared to the automatic arc, so I'm just gonna use this here, move it a bit to the side so it's actually visible. I'll duplicate that arc I've just done and then use the uniform moving tool to just make it a bit smaller. Then use the freeform to push it a bit to the side. So you've basically got like this extra edge here because we're looking at it and it's sort of to the left. So we can see a little bit of the wall that is like in there. In the background layer, you can just go in with your syrup brush and add whatever color you've got closest to that to make sure that this looks nice and tidy. And then let's go back to these two archways, and I've merged those together with a syrup brush and eraser. I'm just going to go in and erase. I've erased that little bit here, and I'm color picking the arch color, and I'm just going to go in and basically fill the shape in here on the side, trying to smooth out the areas that are a little bit uneven. And then over here we can just enable the drawing assist on this layer again just to get an even windowsill look, or just edge to the window here. Because we're sort of from below. Let's turn that off again. So actually we wouldn't be seeing onto the windowsill, but this is just sort of to make sure it looks nice and thick for a moment. Okay, nice. So we've sort of got our basic things in to the ground. Let's go back to the main color base layer. And with this syrup brush, let's go ahead and just get in the basic colors everywhere else. Or maybe we'll just create a new layer just in case. And let's actually grab the hard airbrush. And we'll basically darken the areas that need to be darkened now. So that would be, I'm going to choose a desaturated dark brown for the insides of the bookshelves. Here and here. And then also in the back there, but I'll choose a slightly lighter darkness for the back here. Okay, I can see that there's something sticking out here. I'm just going to erase on the top bookshelf to really flatten out this shape. And also the part which I filled in here. Okay, so now that that's done, let's go back to the syrup brush, and down here I want to add a nice ground. So that will be dark in the areas with the shadow, where basically the light from the window is being broken up on the ground. I would like to add, like a couple of crisscrossy type window frame things. So maybe we should be adding that first actually, but this is sort of on the color base layer. Yeah, let's add the window thing first. So on a new layer above the window, we're going to be adding these frame thingies in the same color as, the frame is already. With the drawing assist, I'm going to go ahead with the syrup again and basically just start with a very simple straight up and down one, and then I'm going to do a couple sort of coming across here Nice. They're nice and even, aren't they? Just make sure they are nice and even. I'll just go back and do these again. Sort of added some equal lines on either side. Let's take the drawing assist out again, and I will go ahead and erase the top part here, and then freeform on a new layer probably is best. I'm gonna go ahead and just add a couple of sort of arches to make this a little bit more Gothic or Victorian. I'm sure there's someone who knows their way around architecture quite well out there, so if you are someone watching this video, feel free to go down and tell me what I am doing wrong. Yep, that's definitely freeform. Nice. So yeah, just do your best. I might just go ahead and below just erase. Or should I not erase it? This looks good, to be honest. It looks good. Might just erase part of the frame with the drawing assist enabled. And then add that color into the side here in the back. Where am I going wrong here? I've just set this layer to multiply so I can see what I'm erasing, and then I'll set it back to normal. It looks a bit tidy now, so that's good. Now back to this arch thing with this color. Let's just add a couple more sort of stilt thingies, straight lines in here, and sort of a strange shape at the top, like a box shape, curved, just to add a bit of something. To make this here look a little bit more like it's supposed to, we can go ahead into the liquefy thing in the adjustment tool, and with a push we can sort of push our shape a little bit further. So I'm going to push it a bit more to the right, so it hopefully looks a little bit more even. Okay, so these guys will have to redo. Let's just go back with the liquefy. I'm going to try and move the center. There, I feel like that looks better already. I'm going to enable the drawing assist again, and just with the serif brush get this space here a bit thicker so it matches. And go ahead and merge that together. Yeah, I think that definitely looks better. I'm going to add these stilts back in. Oh, I thought that was drawing assist. Huh. Drawing assist. Adding these guys back in. Okay, and also perhaps with the liquefy thing one more time, although I'll have to disable the drawing assist. I'm just going in and I'm gonna see if I can just get this here. If you want to check what you've done with the liquefy, if you want to keep it, you can always do this merge, this action here. I think it looks better, funnily enough. Although I will just grab this little thing here with a free lasso tool and move that with a distort just a little bit so it matches. There, I think that is improved. Okay, that was a lot of faffing around for the actual window. Luckily, that is the window done for a moment. So we've got that one, and we want to just make sure that the background looks a little bit better. So here in the back, I want to grab a darker color with the syrup brush and basically add like a vault, like a ceiling that is arched and that comes together at the top. And so I'm just going to add these sort of parts to the wall, and maybe where, you know, the base of that block is over here, making the other side darker like that. And also might as well just make sure it looks like it's sort of going around here. Just for a bit of extra stuff going on. Okay, and let's go back to the ground. So with the syrup brush, we've already added the length way pole that is in here. Let's go ahead and add the others. So we've got like a couple that go across like this. One. And to be honest, this is like, we can make this here be the only one that is sort of visible. That one, because it's going to be nice and bright. And then we'll have a shadow come in from the right side. So that will be the ground. Okay, time to get our books in and our vines, and then detailing, and bam, we're there. So basically, I'm gonna keep using the syrup brush for the vines for a minute. Let's go ahead and add those first. So with a dark green, this looks like an orange, but sometimes that works really well. Let's just go ahead and go a bit greener. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're on a new layer on the top, and it's all about adding your greens. We might as well just start with a darker one. Zoom out, and it'll be a bit easier to, you know, just get a lot of details in here. I'm gonna hold my camera, so hopefully that'll be a little bit better. Just go ahead and add big patches first if you like. If you want to have a lot of green in here, I'm gonna be adding a lot around the window here, and also just climbing down onto this first bookshelf. And when I go into this sort of dark area, I tend to just go and add a lighter green. Here I've chosen a sort of medium one in there, and just add that in there as well. I'll go back to a more dark one and maybe a bit even more greenish color, and I'll add that in here too. So we're sort of already thinking about where the light is going to hit. The light may skim some of these plants, but a lot of them will be in the dark when they're not directly in the sunlight next to the window and stuff. So I don't want to go too heavy with the light detail, and just, yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking anyways while I'm doing this. I'll have the green venture down here, and on this side, Overgrown library after all has got plenty of green in it. I'm also going to add a bunch here at the top. And up here, sort of running along the vaulted ceiling. I'll definitely want to have some here in this corner. I'm gonna go with this more bluish green color and quite dark, quite saturated, just adding this here on the ground. And maybe just sort of reaching up a little bit. And then I'll choose a slightly more desaturated towards the left color green for some of the green leaf highlights here in the back. And even more desaturated and cooler as we go to the front here. None of this is directly in the sunlight after all. And naturally I want to do some over here as well. Now here, this is going to be interesting because it does actually catch the light on the ground. So let's go ahead and add a, well, first of all, we'll need a transitioning color from the dark. So I'm going to go a bit cooler here with that first. And just have that sort of be the lighter part here. And then grab a lighter one, go a bit brighter, go even brighter and warmer towards that light. And all of these will be in quite sharp contrast over here because they are right in the light. So I want to give them a really nice and strong shadow base like that. Over on this side, I'm just going to add a slightly darker one again, just as a bit of a transition. Not quite as dark as that shadow base that I've got on the right, but still darker than the highlights. And why not just have this one go into the light as well over here? Okay, now on the window and that we do want to add some lighter leaves. So I'm just going to go in with this medium lightness. In the window itself, there will be, well, there'll be more contrast again because it's in really sharp light. With some being lit up a lot and others not at all, where they are just in too much light to be lit up themselves. And then up here, want to get that other cooler green back in, climbing over the edge here. And just having a lighter green edge up there. That's a bit cooler as well. And I'll give the ones in the back there by the window a bit of a darker color again to just sort of extend behind that bookshelf on the right. Okay, let's go ahead and add some books. So below the green stuff, I'm gonna go in with the same brush again. We do want to add some shelves actually first, so let's do that with enabling the drawing assist and basically add shelves just like straight like this. Once we've added these, we can just duplicate this layer and make sure to flip the top layer. Now we've got even lines, and we'll use this one here now. Once we've merged those together with the distort function and the move, we can adjust this here to suit our what is it called, our perspective needs. So these guys are sort of sitting similar to the ones in the front. We might just want to make sure that this is nice and straight, so just keeping these here, these lines both, you know, straight. And I've left a space at the top because I will just use this lasso tool and copy paste the top line, and then you can go ahead and distort that again to sort of fit. Then I'll merge those together and we've got us a shelf. I'll duplicate that again, and the lower one I'll move down by tapping it towards the bottom a bit, and then I will decrease the brightness, so you've basically got an automatic shadow. Increase the saturation and decrease the brightness. Okay, and let's go ahead and do the same thing for our other bookshelves, basically duplicating the two layers, like a layer for, well, duplicating each layer with the bookshelves and then using the lower one, moving that to the right side, bottom a bit, by tapping it, and then using the adjustment tool to set the brightness down and the saturation up, making, you know, warm shadows sort of happen. Then merge them together so you've got one layer again. And then let's do that for the other one as well here, moving it after duplicating, setting it lower in brightness and higher in saturation. And let's move that one a little bit more. Okay. So that is all the shelves and that duplicated, I believe. We have still got the window, which we might as well duplicate and move the right one a bit to the right here and decrease the brightness as well. You can see what's happening there. I'll zoom in a bit, increase the saturation. What we do want to do here is, with the syrup brush again, let's create a new layer over the lighter window frame part. And with that darker color that we have used now for that shadow, I would recommend going in and just adding this extra shadow in, because we want to have this left side either darker or brighter where the wall is visible because of the thickness of the window. Just go ahead and try to get that in, and I'll adjust in a second as well. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to leave these like lines free for where the window is connected to the outer part of the wall. Sort of like that, and if you prefer, you can also play around with it, increase the brightness and, you know, make it a bit more orange so it actually looks like that's where the sunlight is coming in. That is probably what we should be doing anyways. I'm not entirely sure yet. But yeah, let's go ahead and just set that. No, I don't know actually if I should be making this so bright. But yeah, let's go ahead and keep that bright. So I've also made that a bit more orange red instead of just red. So that is part of this window as well. So I'm just going to leave that separate, but I'll merge the two window frames together. So this is what we are working with now. Now time to add our books. Actually, we could add those below all the shelves, and I will go ahead and just merge the shelves together. So we've got them all on one area. Then these parts where there is actually all of these, like the backs of the bookshelves and stuff in here, we could also just go ahead and add a bit of a lighter color, red and orange, to the inside of these. So I'm using the hard airbrush and I'm just going to add like a lighter red and just see how that would do if we added a lighter one and then a darker edge, basically indicating that there is like a wall there, indicating the thickness of the shelf. Probably not a bad idea, to be honest. Yeah, so basically you've added that one long paintbrush and then added a darker color with which I'm going to add corners to each of these shelves up there too, because it will just make it look a little bit more 3D, where we can see into the shelves basically. And these parts of the corners are going to get smaller and smaller towards the bottom, and we might as well just basically add nearly nothing at the bottom here and make these here go a bit darker too, because they are towards the bottom, so there'll be less light getting in there. And we can do the same for the other shelves on the right here. Let's go a bit more or like reddish though, and I'll go a bit more saturated. So we'll add some of these. And some darker areas too. These don't need to be too sharp, that's why I'm using the airbrush. I'm just going to color the back one dark and also the top one. and the bottom one here. And again, we just want to go in and add that little bit of a, you know, corner here. So it looks something like that, and perhaps on the back we can go ahead and do something a little bit similar, just having a slightly darker brown at the top here, I think will be fine. And then a darker one even more towards the bottom. Now that the shadows are coming in, I feel like the painting is coming together a lot more already, which is nice, always nice to see. I'll also add a bit more shadow coming in from the right top here, and also up at the top here from the top because of these greens. And then we've got this part here where basically the bottom of the shelf is still from the ground, and I'm just going to make that dark so it looks like there is a bit of a separation going on there. And I'm going to extend the shadow at the bottom a bit to the edge of these greens. For the actual light down here, we might as well just go ahead and add that in here too. I want to have quite a bright part here for where the light will be hitting the ground. Oops, actually, this isn't supposed to be bright at all, is it? Because that is actually the ground outside of the window light, but there might be diffused light. We'll just go with diffused light. And just add a lighter orange into these brighter parts where the window is sort of reflected in. Bright reflections often have a very bright, like saturated border. So I'm going to add a strong orange to the edge of this bright light along all of the shadows. And even in the dark shadow part, I'm going to add a bit more of a reddish tone that is quite strong. And here we can then actually go ahead and just increase the shadow coming in from the edge. Very saturated. I'm going to follow that up with a less saturated one and also a little bit of a more neutral one over here. We've got some of these like vines coming in, so actually we want to get a bit of that window reflection altered. And that one we can also make sure that it has a very bright edge. Now let's go ahead and add those books with the syrup brush, and I'm just going to use a light medium orange color and make sure that is on a new layer, and then just add that basically in the form of these like little rectangles. If I am doing a commission and stuff, I would do all of them by hand, but because we are in tutorial and this is fairly self-explanatory, I will just go ahead and I'm just wondering if I should be putting that a bit more to the left, and I think so. So I'm going to put this layer over the bookcases, but then it's just a matter of sort of watching out that you don't draw over the line of the bookcase here. But yeah, so basically because it's a tutorial, I will just go ahead and do one of these. Oh great, thanks Procreate. It's just done a back one. And just give these books some darker edges on the side, and then I will duplicate this layer and we'll go from there. Alright, so let's go ahead and duplicate that. Also, I do just want to, with the distort option in the moving tool, I'm just going to move that slightly so it actually touches the other side. And then duplicate that layer and move that into the other areas. You'll have to move it with the distort thingy a little bit because that is just the nature of this perspective. And maybe even just adjust some areas like this, giving it an extra bit of a touch up or something. I'm gonna make this book a bit darker anyways. And duplicate that one again. Distort. I'm just gonna try and get these into a more equal height shape. Again, trying to keep the lines fairly straight of the books. I'll merge these guys together now and actually go ahead and just do some more by hand. So this is sort of the darker shade that I had in between the books, which I'm just going to use to sort of add sort of the sides of the books first, and then I'll add the lighter part of the books on top of that. And just adjust that top part of the book so it's angled slightly towards the left downward, just to follow the perspective of your bookcase as well. Duplicate that. Okay, I don't actually know if I should be filming all this stuff or if I should just let you guys do it and skip to when I've done it. But I will just go ahead and film it all so that you guys, I don't know. I hope this is sort of helpful. I'll go ahead and just start with the lighter part here again. And try and add a couple of different variations for heights. I'm actually just going to go in ahead and add all these like lighter book parts, and then on a new layer below that I'll add all the edges that are a little bit darker than the brightest part here. And I'll also make sure that they are all thick by duplicating the layers and stuff in a minute. and tidying them all up together. I think that will save some time. I'll add a bit of a fallen book here, a couple that are sort of just leaning against each other. I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate that layer and see if I move one of them a little bit to the side, if I can, just make them thicker. Yep, I think that will save a heck of a lot of work. And I might just freehand copy paste some of these books to make these a little bit thicker as well. And duplicate them again to thicken them up towards the ground. Merge down and duplicate again for the top. Like that. I think that will, yeah, definitely makes a difference, doesn't it? I'll merge that down again and then go ahead with the rectangular selection tool to easily just erase the bottom part of these guys. And similarly, the bottom part of these. And then these here will have to be done manually because they've got this perspective going on. I will just select these guys at the top here manually and move them down a bit so that I can erase more of the bottom part, but also so they definitely all touch the actual bookshelf. Okay, so that's done, and then we've just got basically these books, the last bookshelf down here, in which case go ahead and feel free, oops, to rectangularly select some of these books, copy paste, flip horizontally to avoid any doubling, uniform, and move that up a bit so it's bigger. You even go freeform and just adjust the length. There you go, happy with that. And then we've just got the ones on the right here. Duplicate and create a new layer for that, and I'll just do all the light ones over here as well. I'll duplicate them, merge them together, duplicate them again, and move them slightly so that they are thicker. And then I will adjust them with the distort option. Erase the bottom part, sit them down a bit better on the actual surface, and then duplicate these guys as well, because I will try and save some time over here. I'll flip the next duplication and see if that would make any difference aesthetically. Duplicate them again, and for these guys, I'll merge all of these guys together again. I'll just duplicate the top layer and put this one down here. Freeform to make him longer. And then yeah, we have to go ahead and just fine tune some of these books. So I'll merge them all together. And let's just go ahead and erase some of these tops so they look a little bit more, you know, intentional. Again, sort of following the line of the bookshelf in the direction of which I'm racing. And now let's go ahead and merge that down with the other books. On a new layer below that, let's go ahead and add the lighter gray that we had earlier as part of the other books. That is just sort of the book side, so you just go ahead and add those behind the other books. The good news is you can draw over the edge here of, you know, the bookshelf, because we'll just set this layer below the bookshelves, and then that will save us a little bit of work here. And then with these books in the back, I'll choose a slightly darker color and just go ahead and, you know, sort of add a bit of that in between where you think the books might just be like slightly visible. Oh, wrong color. And on these guys too, maybe slightly lighter here so they stand out against these bookcases a little bit. Alright, and let's just move this here below the bookcases to tidy it all up. Does make a big difference, not really, but yep, that's good. For the wall in the back, let's just go ahead and create a new layer at the top with an overlay layer mode, and with we've got these cool new brushes. Let's go ahead and just have a quick look. Street art, oh my goodness. I'm so excited about these. Let's just go ahead with the creative one with the Poetina, and add some of this and just see how it looks to the wall. I think this might be an overlay layer, but let's just create a new layer below the overlay layer in a normal way, and that looks really cool. So I'm just going to use this light dark bit of thing to just add that texture to the wall. I'll add a bit of a darker texture to these like areas, create maybe a bigger brush to have more texture. Nice, that looks pretty good. Here I want to grab a darker color and just add that to the ground a bit. That's pretty intense. Let's go ahead and just grab the Stucco brush from the original brush layer with the eraser and take some of that out. Okay, I think let's just go ahead and move into the overlay layer. We want to grab the hard shading brush, hard airbrush, I mean. Where is that? Hard airbrush. And with a darker color, desaturated more in the brown orange area, I'm just going to add a bit of a shadow to this corner here. We want to have the main light coming from the window, so to have contrast might be quite nice. It looks a bit muddy right now, to be honest, but we will see what we can do with this. I'm just going to add a little bit to the books too. And a little bit down here. Now, an add layer to check out what kind of light we want at the top. I'm going to choose that really bright orange light again and just see how that would look coming in. So that's nice, but I do want to just be a bit more intentional with these light rays. I think 2 is quite good. I'm going to smudge them out with the same, oops, that's my own brush, with the hard airbrush. And just with the hard airbrush in the eraser go in, and hopefully we might have to duplicate that and hide one of them. Hopefully create stronger separation between the light. Yeah, I think that looks really nice. I'm just gonna see if I can blend that out carefully again. So it's still there, but not quite as strong. I definitely prefer that, so I'm gonna erase the other one. We can smudge out the edge here because this here will be really strong anyways with light. Might just not do that for a minute. That is pretty good light. So I've duplicated the add layer to see how strong we can go, and that is quite nice. So yeah, I'm gonna go for that. I'm gonna keep that. I'm just gonna see if I distort the light a little bit to match the window down there, so we can actually get that in there. I think that is nice. But I also like this a lot, so maybe I'll just add an extra bit of sunshine there. And maybe just with the eraser, take a little bit out in this corner. So it looks like the sun rays are more focused on that ground there than they are on the bush over there. Okay, that's nice. Now with the books, generally speaking, I would go ahead, let's go do that just in case, and create an overlay layer over them. Make them stick to the actual books. And with my brushes, I'd usually go in and just add some dark boundaries. So let's go ahead and do that with the hard airbrush and add a bit of a stronger boundary, separating them from each other, just so they look a little bit more shaped, and this will sort of give him a bit of a curved shape too. If you just make sure to add that to the edges here and not overall, with a fairly straight line. And the depth will just help form things into 3D. Over here on these guys. We can even turn that size up a bit from this brush here and just gently go in, adding that in between. And just adding a bit overall on these books in the back here. Maybe not quite like that strong, but just a little bit. If you happen to like accidentally color a whole book dark, that's fine. Some of them will be further back than others. It's all flexible. And then just on these guys here, okay, so that is that first part. And then also let's go ahead and create a color layer. Here we can basically go ahead and add color to our books. So with the same brush, I would just go ahead and add a bit of red on some of these. I myself am partial to a brown toned library, but there are different opinions on that out there, I know. I'll go a bit more cherry red for some of these. In the back here too. It's quite strong, but don't let that stop you. We'll adjust that in a moment. It's just to get the initial color on these books, some of them. I'll also add some greens. I quite like adding some greens. They are very strong, I feel like, every time I add them, whether I want them to be strong or not. Go a bit more into the yellow greens, if that makes any difference. Yep, a little bit. And naturally, I will add some more blue books. And some purple ones and pink. Okay, so the books have got their initial color on them, and then I would just go ahead and add another sort of, should we go with an overlay layer again? Yep, and then with here, with the Stucco brush, I would just go in with a dark brown and give them a bit of texture. That's a lot of texture. We might have to check out the different brushes and textures that are in the new library for a second. Let's go with the Fossil Cove one and just have a look. Oh no, okay, I will have to pause this for a second. Okay, I've just decided to go for the Nutgrove one and on the overlay layer, which by the way I've pulled underneath the color layer and made it into a clipping mask on the books, and also the overlay layer, the color layer is now a clipping mask layer. So on this overlay layer with the Nutgrove, I've got like a desaturated darkish red going on, and this is just to add a bit of a a bit of a texture to these books, so you can just go ahead and add that across. With the less saturated and lighter color in the overlay, it's not going to be as overbearing as, you know, if it was really dark, and because it's overlay, it sort of matches the colors that are already existing a bit, which is nice. So yeah, this is just sort of the texture I'm going to choose this time. Once that is in and you've got everything else going with the color layer, if you are unhappy with the amount of color you've got, like it's too much, you can make it less saturated, of course, as in you can make it less opaque, the layer. I'm quite happy with this amount, to be honest, and I'll also go ahead now and let's just quickly hide. Interesting, I forgot that I had an overlay layer at the top. Very interesting. I will make that less opaque here because that's really intense. And I just want to turn off the light so I can, on the new layer below the green, go back to our originals with the, let's just go with Mercury and see what that does. I usually add a bit of a structure to the books, as in some of these guys have got like bindings to the back, because they're hardcover books, so they'll probably be bound. And I just add like a couple of streaks like this to make them look like that. They can have two, they can have one, they can have none, it doesn't really matter. And often in photos, I feel like, of libraries, you see a lot of the same ones standing next to each other, so you could go ahead and just do very similar ones next to each other, or you could just do separate ones, different ones across the whole row. This here gives you a chance to also just quickly amend any things that you feel like look a little bit weird. But don't forget that you've got several blending mode layers over these books, and sometimes the only thing that makes them look weird is that you've turned off a blending mode layer, like we have the add layer now. Here, to make sure that this color that you're choosing isn't too dark, I've just sort of chosen the color that they have in between them. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple of these everywhere. The Mercury brush is quite nice, especially for grass and stuff, so we'll definitely be using that one in a second anyways. I'll go a little bit desaturated and darker and make the brush a bit smaller, although it doesn't seem like it's done a lot. I definitely want to go a bit lighter on the back here. than this because that is really dark, and to be honest, the shadows in between the books are quite light anyways. And then over here, I'm going to go for a bit darker again. And now that we've sort of added these guys, let's just enable the light again. In the light, generally speaking, I do add an add layer again. I will pull that just below the main light layer and hide the other one again. And here with, let's go ahead with the oil paint from Procreate. I'm just gonna grab a light, desaturated red. I haven't got much experience with the oil paint here in this instance. We might just have to experiment for a second. Oh yeah, okay. So basically setting the opacity of the brush down a little bit and then sort of just trying to go down the middle of the book spine to add a bit of a reflection there. Trying to very gently press onto the brush and not too much. So it's a little bit tempered, and thereby just adding, yeah, a bit of a reflection, a bit more 3D here. Also, you don't have to do every single book. I think with the bookshelves left and right, I think it would be definitely good. But in the back, especially there, you don't really need to do that because, it might be a bit further away and stuff. So that's fine. Let's enable this here and just see. So with the texture brush, the Stucco brush in the erase, I'm just going to go over the back and erase a little bit. Now this will be adding a little bit more texture and also just hiding some of that light to make it go back into the distance, especially. Also, I'll do this on the left side here. And where you don't have particularly symmetrical or even straight lines, you can go and do that too, because it just makes it look a little bit more better. More better. Just better, like down here. And I'm gonna add some down here too, or take some away rather, and some up there at the top. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I want to grab the, oh yeah, there is a little bit of space here with the chalk brush. I'm just gonna erase a little bit that went over there. And then with the chalk brush in the painting, I will go ahead and hide that top add layer again, create a new layer beneath, and tap the color of the main bookshelf there. I'll grab a lighter, more saturated color, and then with the chalk brush, I'm just going to go over and add a little bit more texture and color to the bookshelf to make it look a little bit more rendered. I'll use a syrup in the eraser just to get a clean eraser in, and then do the same for the sides. Maybe more saturated but less bright for the back here. And then definitely much brighter on this one. And if you feel more confident using the drawing assist, then go ahead and use that. I'm going to go slightly darker for these in between spacings because they don't really directly face the light. Okay, and then for the rails in the back on the window, I'll also add a slightly lighter edge to them. A very much lighter edge here on this window part. And then going a bit more desaturated and darker for the actual window frame. Okay, then once that's done, I want to add a darker edge around the window top here and the sides. And also in these archways, just slightly darker. Then for the ground, I want to just grab a lighter, more saturated color for this area here than we've already got there. So just color pick and then choose slightly lighter saturated color, more saturated color, and then just add that in these squiggly sideways lines for some ground texture. That's okay if it overlaps on the actual grass and stuff. Also, I'll go a bit darker and add that in from the side as well. Also some through the actual lighter parts. No, maybe not that quite that strong, but yeah, just a little bit. Indicate the ground surface. With the lighter one, I'll just go over the ones I've just added in brown. And I'll add a couple of taps around because there might be little stones that are, you know, sort of highlighting the light coming through. Now, time to look at that grass again. So let's go and grab in the inking section the Inka brush. And I want to enable the light in this case now. And on the top over the add layer for the light, I'm just going to add a new layer, a normal one, and here I want to add the rest of my greens to really get these in there. Okay, so my audio is probably going to be a little bit worse now because I have to charge my phone, but I just realized as well, I haven't really changed the back color of these books yet, which makes these look a little bit like flat. So going back to that layer behind the bookshelves, you can just have a little experiment. I've duplicated that layer just in case, and on the top one I'm just going to experiment with darkening the book sides, which I think makes a definite improvement. I mean, even to just having nothing, it really depends on what you prefer, really. The jury is sort of out, really. I don't know which one I would prefer. I'm gonna go with this just because that's sort of what we had, or rather that is the improved version of what we had, this versus that. So it's a little bit darker, and also I just will increase that overlay layer that was really dark, and I've just sort of had it down here, so I'm just going to increase that a bit. And what else did I want to do? I just want to go in with an overlay layer on the very top to really increase the brightness, like the saturation of the colors. So with a really strong orange and the hard airbrush, I'm just going to go and add that really strong orange tone to the shadows down here, to the ground, and also to the books. And then to the side, not sure if I want to do that up there, but I'll put it above the window for sure. And even just on one of these or a couple of these. Then let's go and add our greens a bit more on a new layer on top. So with the Inka brush, I am going to add basically slightly lighter colors to the areas with the darker colors, basically across the whole board, just adding lighter colors on top of the dark ones that are already there. Going a bit warmer towards the sunlight. Also, I was just thinking the book dividers here, we can do something with that. We can set those to add as well. We might as well duplicate them and then set one of these guys back to overlay. Pull them down a bit. And now we've got like a bit of a 3D effect going on here. We've got the add and the overlay. And we can pull the add up a little bit more, which will make it more intense. And in the background case, I will use the Stucco brush again to just erase some of that, just a little bit. I think that looks much better. Let's go back to the normal layer on the top with the Inka brush, and definitely want to just change what we've got up here. Whoops. Around the window. Also make sure to add a bunch of like shadow in between these leaves, and that will just really enhance some of that brightness in there and make it look a little bit more realistic. Trading towards the top, I'm going to go a bit lighter here. And a bit warmer to the side here. And then a lot warmer up here, just on the top of this bookcase. That will be a lot brighter and warmer. We'll also have a couple of really dark shadows around here, so don't be afraid to go in there with the dark as well to get that contrast out. especially in the back. I'll go even darker and probably more blue would be good. And I'll do the same over here, just making sure I'm adding enough shadows. And then a bit darker again towards the back. I'll go a little bit less dark in the darker parts to the background and make these a bit less saturated as well, just so they look a little bit more towards the distance. And then we've got stuff here in the front. I want to just add a couple more smaller leaves and perhaps a couple of like grass bits with the Mercury brush. Sort of coming in from the background to the foreground with lighter to darker grass pieces. Up here on this archway, I want to add some green that doesn't quite stick out so much, so I've chosen a slightly darker color than the actual color of the wall, hoping that will make it fade back into the background even more, and I think that is doing the trick. I'll go a little bit less saturated towards the left back and just have that sort of climb over to the right. And also I'll color pick this part and just add a slightly darker color for the leaves up here. And I'll do the same on the top here, just to really force these parts into the background. And I think it's actually doing the trick really well. I'll also do the same over here and just grab a couple of darker leaf parts for this wall. Okay, that is looking better. I do want to add a little bit of contrast here. That is coming down in green. And then just adding a couple of lighter bits of leaf that are just extending from the various pieces into the window. And I also want to add some into the background of the window. So just sort of going back to the background, creating a new layer above the background. I want to just, usually I would grab my texture brush here. We can use the old brush, I guess. Or we could just use the Inka brush still. Basically, you want to just turn off the big light, to be honest, and the overlay layer. And on the background there, just grab the color you've got in there and then choose a slightly darker color and use that to start adding like a bit of a like foresty background, I guess, trees. So I'm just going to add these in here now. I think this is a good color choice to begin with because it's really nice and bright and only barely stands out against the background, meaning it does definitely look like it belongs to the background. I'll go a slightly bit darker just for an edge down here where maybe it's coming a bit closer, like that. Let's have a look how that looks when we turn on our light. The add color does swallow a lot. I'm just gonna turn that down a little bit. I think I might just take a little bit of that add lighting away in the window. With the Stucco brush in the eraser, I just am going to check how that might look. I think that's nice. It adds a bit of texture for the actual window, maybe for the window pane. So I would be happy with that. And also I do want to create a new layer below that, turn off the add lighting layer, and then just add a slightly darker, color with the Stucco brush to the wall. Turn on the add again and have a look. Yeah, so that adds a little bit more texture. I think that's quite good. Maybe go a bit darker on the left here. Yeah, I like that a lot. The Stucco brush is a great bit of texture. And then on the ground here, we can also add a bit of that texture. But I might just turn these two off again because that's quite a lot. And just sort of go in and add your various light with the Stucco brush a bit more intensely, perhaps. I'm gonna add a bit of a blue tint just to see how that would look when I add that in here. Let's see. Yeah, I think that adds a nice bit of, you know, extra type of light, a bit different. And I'll also add that bluish light into the wall here and here. Okay, that's nice. On the below all the grass and the green stuff for the actual where we've got all the book stuff going on, I want to create a new layer below the green layer. And here I think it would be great to just, with the hard airbrush, add quite a bit of dark blue. Maybe this is on a normal layer. We'll set that to, let's see what it would do on an overlay. I'm just trying to add a little bit of shadow. I love playing with these layer types, the blending mode layers, but actually I think we're just gonna have to leave it on the normal and then go in and with a Stucco brush maybe just erase a little bit so it's more visible, some parts. And maybe just with the hard airbrush erase a little bit here below on these books. A bit more specific, I think that looks good. And I also want to go ahead with the dark blue and just add a bit of that shadow to the top here, to these books, and to these books at the top here, and also to the bottom. All the parts of the bottom too, on the shelves, and coming in from the right side, because we don't really want that to be too visible. Let's see if we hide that again and just see where we've added that. I think that looks good. I'm just going to add a little bit more to the top here, and maybe just a bit more here, make it really intense. And with the Stucco brush, just go slightly over that to get some texture in. Yeah, I think that looks good. Let me just see. Okay, so what is obviously happening is here, the chalk that we added as texture onto the bookshelves is quite obvious now here. We might have to move that lower. No, I think I'll leave it at the top again where it was, and I will just go in with the texture brush and like just gently erase parts of that. Erase parts of the highlights of the, you know, on the bookshelves that we added with the chalk brush. Just a little bit, so they are not quite as strong and obnoxious in some areas. And down here, for example. Yeah, I like that. That looks really nice. Much happier with that, to be honest. Much happier. This green here, there are some areas where I also think maybe that is a bit too dark. So I'm just going to select the areas I think are a bit too dark, lightening them by a few percent. That seems to be doing the trick quite well. Okay, that's good. I'll also add a couple more, where's the Inka brush, specific types of plants in here. For example, we can add, you know, some small blue flowers that are sort of just climbing around here. And make sure you've got a couple of different shades of blue in there, of different brightness levels, so that, you know, they look like they might be just sort of, some of them are more in the shade than others. I'll also want to add a couple like clay thingies here, 4-leaf clover type things, just like tiny things here like that. Just adding in a little bit of different texture, again, detail. I'm also going to add that really bright green I've just selected, or yellow you can call it, to the edge of this green that is sort of stretching into the light, and give that a nice boundary of light around it so that it looks like it is also just there where it starts. Followed by a slightly darker green to just get that transition in. And over here as well, just a couple of lighter greens, followed by a couple of darker ones for the shadows. And also I feel like we just want to add a couple more on these vines. I'm still not entirely happy with the ad lay here with the light, the general light, so I will just go ahead and with the eraser in the hard airbrush, I will just, take away a little bit of this light coming in, just the strength of it at the top here, and then go back to the very top and add a new ad layer there, where I will add some of that brighter light on the foliage back in, here in particular just below the window and on the side. So we've got the light streaming in here, and we've got the foliage lit up by the light. Nice bit of ambience, soft light going on here. And now with the Lightpen from Procreate, I want to add, oh, that's why my pen's coming loose. That's why everything's happening all the time. And with a slightly darker orange, I want to add a couple of these lights floating around in this library. And that looks like we have got us our painting. I'm just gonna see if I want to take a little bit of this strong light over here away. I think so, just a little bit. And let that background come through a bit more. But yeah, I'm much happier with that. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it like that, I think, and just, you know, add your signature at the bottom, and bam, you've got your painting done. If you have any questions at all, just let me know in the comments below, and I've added my color palette below as well in different formats. So yeah, I hope you have fun, and I hope this was well explained. I am always winging it a little bit, as you might have been able to tell very much, and I hope the audio wasn't too bad at the end. But yeah, I will make more, so if you have any requests, just leave them below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!